This is Gemara in Kesubos, Daf Samuch Aleph. All the learning of this month, the month of Elul, has been generously sponsored as an incredible schos. Ilan Neshama of Esther Rezel Basra Meir, Mir Hashem. The learning of the entire Chabura should bring as the Rezel Basra Meir higher and higher in Gan Eden Shalmaila, closer and closer to the Kisei HaKavod, and should be a tremendous Milat Yosher for her entire family. Apologies for the lateness of yesterday's Shir, Baruch Hashem. We should be back up to date, and we're hoping within a few days we should be back to our old setup with all the proper audio and visual, etc. So we pick it up, and we are 4 lines down into the wide lines on Samach Amid Beis. We're in the middle of discussing, in general, we got into the discussion about a woman nursing her child in regard to if she gets divorced, what is her status regarding her child, when she's got to get remarried, etc. But we digress a bit, and the Gemara today says, 4 lines into the wide line, what is the halacha if a woman hires herself out to be a wet nurse? If she hires herself to be a wet nurse, she's not allowed to simultaneously be nursing her own child or another child. If she stipulates that she's going to nurse the baby a little bit, she has to eat a lot of food. And the Gemara will explain, she's not allowed to eat foods which are bad for her own milk. End of Brisa. So comments the Gemara, now that we say that her own child, she's not allowed to nurse while she's being contracted out to be a wet nurse, to nurse another one for pay. Why does that have to say the son of another? So explains the Gemara, I would have thought maybe her own child, she has particular mercy on her own child, and therefore we have to be nervous. We have to be nervous that she's going to give her own child more, and therefore she's not going to have enough milk left for the one that she's getting paid for. But for the other child, if it's not for the fact that she had extra milk, she would never go and nurse her friend's child. So says the Gemara, Kamash Malon, from here we see that no. From here we see that halacha is that she can't even nurse her friend's child while she's being contracted out to be a wet nurse. Continues the Gemara and explaining the Raisa, Paska Kima Eicheles Harbe. Says the Raisa that if the mother stipulated to supply her with a little bit of food, she eats a lot. So explains the Gemara, Mehecha. From where does she get all this extra food that she has to eat? That she has to pay from it from her own pocket. That part of contracting yourself out to be a wet nurse is the understanding that in order to be able to nurse a baby properly, she has to eat adequately. Therefore, she has to pay from her own pocket to be able to have the appropriate milk. Says the Gemara, she should not be eating items and foods which are bad for nursing. My ninu, what are these items? Says the Gemara, says Rav Kahana, hop screen, sprouting, small fish, and earth. Even palm shoots and unripened dates. And Rababa, Marafilu Kara, Vekofra. Kara Vekofra is palm shoots, unripened dates. Kara Vechabusha is squash and quince. And Ravashi, Marafilu Kimcha, Veharsina, even kutach and fish hash. All the wonderful artful explanations of these words. Says the Gemara, Minayu Paska Chalva, Minayu Achri Chalva. Some of these items are bad because it causes the woman to stop producing milk, whereas others of these items turn the milk sour, and therefore she should not be consuming these foods while she's being a wet nurse. Continues the Gemara, a bit of a tangential discussion, 4 lines to the end of the Amid. If a woman has marital relations next to a mill, Havle B'nei Nachvi. Rahman al-Atlan, she doesn't have children who are epileptic. The Misham Shel Araf, woman has relations on the ground. Havle B'nei Shemushi did Havle Shemuti, she doesn't have children with elongated necks. The Darka al Rama, if she walks on the excrement of a dechamra of a donkey. Havle B'nei Digardi Girdani, she'll have children who don't have a lot of hair. Ta'achla chardala, if she eats a lot of mustard. 2 lines to the bottom, Avale B'nei Zalzalani, she doesn't have children that eat a lot of food. Gluttonous children. Ta'achla techli, what is the story if she eats cress? Havle b'ni dolfani, she didn't have children who are teary-eyed. Da'achla munini, if she eats a small fish. Havle b'ni motzitzieni, what she can have children with fluttering eyes. Da'achla gargushta, if she eats clay. Havle b'ni mechayari, her children will be unpleasant, will be ugly. Deshasi shechra, if she drinks beer. Havle b'ni ochmi, then she didn't have dark children. Da'achli bisra v'shasi chamra, if she eats meat and drinks wine. Havale b'ni, she didn't have children, as we turn over to today's daf of Samach Aleph and Aleph. Havale brei, she'll have healthy children. Da'achli bi, if she eats eggs. Havale b'nei anini, she'll have children with large eyes. Da'achli kavri, if she eats fish. Havale b'nei chanini, she'll have children that are charming. Da'achla karfisa, if she eats celery. Havale b'nei zituni, she's zivsani, she should have radiant children. Da'achla kusbarta, she eats coriander. Havale b'nei bisrani, she'll have fat children. Da'achli esrog, if she eats esrog. Havale b'nei reichani, she'll have fragrant children. The Gemara tells the story. Brought to the Shavar Malka, the daughter of Shavar Malka, achlo ba'ima, her mother ate esrogim, avimasa the kimid abaya. They're to bring her in front of her father, Barish Rechani, at the head of the fragrances, showing the incredible power of the mother eating, esrog while being pregnant. So continues the Gemara back to original topic on the obligation of a woman to nurse. Amar Rav Huna, Podak Lan, says Rav Huna, Podak Lan, Rav Huna Bar Chinna, tested us with the following question. If she says Lahanik, she says that she wishes to nurse, and the husband says, and the husband says he does not want her to nurse. Shaymin la, we listen to her. Saira didahu, why? Because it's her own pain for her not to nurse is going to cause her pain. Therefore, we listen to her that she wants to nurse the child. But in the reverse, if a woman is saying not to nurse, what's the halacha? Explains the Gemara, that whenever it is not orche, whenever it's not of her custom of her family, it's not her minhag to nurse, then we cannot force her. He archa v'hu lav archa. If it's her family and not his family's way of doing things, what's the halacha? A fundamental shayla. What do we do with regard to the obligation of a mother to nurse? Does it go after her or his family hanagais? And says the Gemara, Pashinna le meha. And we answer the question from the following brace that says, that a woman goes up with her husband in his marriage but never comes down in his stature. And explains the Gemara, Amar Abuna, my karaf, from where do we know? A pasuk that a woman only elevates herself via marriage. Vihi ba'ula zabal. Says the pasuk that she's the married woman, and from here we darshan ba'al yasai shel ba'al. Larry dasai shel ba'al. She goes up with her husband, she does not go down with her husband. Rav Eliezer, different pasukim, I say, aim kol chay l'chayim nitna, v'lo yitzar nitna, that the aim is get l'chayim and not l'tzar. Continues the Gemara, chlis le'shivcha. So the Mishnah continued, and the Mishnah dealt with different scenarios of amounts of money, amounts of avadim, shivachais, that a woman is bringing into the marriage. Says the Gemara, if you bring in one shivcha, Hashara Avda, then she doesn't have to do certain particular avodas. She doesn't have to grind, make, and launder, but the rest of avodas she has to yes to for her husband. Ask the Gemara, so why doesn't she say, let her say, I brought you another woman in my place? Just like if it was just me over here, I'd have to do all the work for you. So why can't this woman say, the wife, that now I bring in a maidservant and she's going to take over all my obligations? Says the Gemara, Misham the Amar Allah, you know why? Because the maidservant's going to tell her, it's true that this maidservant could bother for myself and for her, but who's going to bother for you? And that is the reason why, even when one brings in one maid, they still have to do some level of work. Continues the Gemara, but time you bring in two maids, then you don't have to cook, you don't have to nurse, etc. Says the Gemara, Shari Avda, but everything else she does, he has to have to do. The Gemara asks the same question. Why doesn't he say, I brought another woman that's going to work for me and for you? I wanted to work for herself and for her. So why does a woman have to work if she brings in 2 maidservants? Misham the Amar Lo Kami Orche Uparche Man Tarich. Explains the Gemara, the reason is because the husband could say, who will be involved in the Orchi, the Parchi, the long-term guests? So we need an extra set of hands. But if a woman brings in 3 maids, then she does not have to make the bed. Explains the Gemara, Shari Avda, but everything else she has to do. Why did she say, I brought you in 3 maids? What do you need from me? Explains the Gemara, Misham Damar Lux, he can say to her, Navish b'nei beis and Navish orchei uparchi. The more people in the household, the more guests that we're going to have. Yachi asked the Gemara, I feel arba nami. So even if she has 4 maidservants, the same thing should be that she always should have to work. Explains the Gemara, no, I haven't given the Navishtum Sayana Dadi, since there's so many maids, when you have 4, they each help each other and they can take care of everything. And Amar Rav Chana v'Timur Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani lo achnitz lo mamish. This does not mean that she actually brought in a maidservant. Ella kiva she'ro'oya li, she has the means, she has the wealth to bring in a maidservant. That is the halacha of the Mishnah. So it's not a din if she actually brings in the maidservant, but rather it's a din of the ability to do such. Continues the Gemara, the very famous Gemara, Arba Yosheves B'Ketadra, that if she brings in 4 maidservants, she can just sit and do nothing. And then the Gemara pointed out that different opinions about what's going to happen if a woman remains idle. Even though we started the Mishnah, she can sit on her throne. So begins the Gemara that even if a woman has all the maids in the world, still the intimate acts between husband and wife, she is obligated to do, to pour him a cup, to make it his bed, to wash, prepare the water for his hands, face, and leg. Whenever a husband does, the nida does. Whenever a regular wife does, the nida does. Except for these categories, making his bed, giving him a drink, washing his face, these are all items that are forms of endearment, therefore they are forbidden while the woman is a nida. But another important rule, these are the rules brought down into Mikuf Sadihei, the rules of our chakis by a nida. But says the Gemara, very important, you're only not allowed to make her bed in front of her, but shaloi b'fanav is a different halacha. Mazika Zakai said, we said that she's not allowed to pour him a cup. The first white line, Shmuel would serve whenever he had to serve his wife while he was a nida. He would do it with his left hand. Abaye will put the cup in the mouth of a jug, and Rava will put it on a pillow. Rav Papa would place it on a stool. Basically showing that when it comes to serving a drink to one's spouse when she is an ida, the way to do it is a shinoi, by either serving with a different hand or the placement of where you place it. Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Chinina, Amar Avuna kol mashmnei hashemesh Hashamosh. Any food that the waiter is serving you, do not have to give him right away. You're allowed to have him first feed the people, aside from meat and wine, because meat and wine is so salivating that anyone who sees it wants to have it. Therefore, you're not able to make the waiter stay extra and wait for the food. Amar Rav Chisda basar shemen v'yayin yashin means old wine, of course, and fatty meat. Amar Rava basar shemen kol hashanin kula yayin yashin is specifically in tkuvas tammuz. Amar Ravanan says Ravanan bar Techliva v'gumin gweder Mar Shmuel. And he brought me over this dish of tavshila di'ardi v'lav di'ovla istakani, and after the fact that he gave it to me, what would have happened? I would have been misukan, I would have been in mortal danger. Rav Papa Amar says, Rav Papa, Amar Rav. One second. Vaisli tavshila da'ardi v'lav di'ovla istakani. Rav Ashi, I've come to made Rav Kana. I was one of Rav Kana. Vaisli gargili delifta. And another story, he brought me over some of these interesting types of food. Bechala and vinegar. V'lav di'ovla istakani. If not for the fact, I would have become a chayla. Rav Papa Amar afilu tarmata dehunisa. Even tarmata dehunisa, even a fatty date can as well at some points be detrimental to oneself. Called the isla reicha isla kiyua. They have a scent, if they're pungent, and they have kiyua. And now the Gemara tells a story. So first we just learned out that any time that it has a savory aroma and taste, it calls your name, the halacha is, it could harm a person when he eats it in front and he's not able to partake. That if you eat this food in front of someone else, you don't offer it to them, it could cause them physical harm. Says the Gemara, Avua bar'i, Umenyana bar'i, Chatzavi mikol mina. Mina won't taste it every min. Chatzavi michad mina mishtay aleo ba'adei. Marloi mishtay aleo ba'adei. Different levels of nevuah that they had. Hanu tartin chasidi. There were these three chasidim. Vamri lo Ramari bar Pinchas b'nei Rav Chisda Mahar. Kadim Safi Umar. Safi, they called him Safi Elio Mishtay Ba'adei. Different ways that Elio went to visit them. Safi Lo Mishtay Elio Ba'adei. And continues the Gemara as we turn over the page. Hameimar Umar Zucha Ravashi Avikavyasi Apischa Dve Asgar. These three incredible Jews were sitting by the entrance of the Melech Asgor's palace. Chalev Azal Atur Naga. And the king's steward passed by carrying the food for the king. Chazir Ravashi the Marzuchas, Ravashi saw Marzuchas. We turn over to Samachal of Amid. Beis the Chavar Abe. He saw the Marzucha turned his face. He didn't want to see the food. His face was becoming pale. Shakal Atzvase Anach Lebe Pumeis. What do? He took his finger and he placed it in his mouth in order to prevent him from fainting. So he said to him, what's going on? You're ruining the king's meals. Why are you doing this? Man David Achi Pasal Lemaichal de Malka. Amrulei, Amai, why is he puzzle for the food of the king? Amrlo, Davar Acher Chazaibi. I saw that there's some Davar Acher, some Chazir, some pigs, some leprosy on the food. But they couldn't find it. Sharklat Bas, he took his finger on a chale when he put on the meat. Amrlo, Achami Batkiu, Batkuv, Ashachu, Amrle, Rabbana, my time is Nisa. Was it an ace? Asked the Gemara, what? You went out on a limb and you went to see if the meat was spoiled. Says the Gemara, it was not an ace at all. It was that fact that he was able to see the Ruach HaTomah floating above his head. So now, says the Gemara, some stories. We're 10 lines down after the two das, and the Gemara says that anytime you have this craving, you have this desire for food, and you don't satisfy it, what could happen? There was a Roman, so that this woman said to him, get married to me, she responded, Loi. She responded that, no, I'm not going to marry you. Also, this man went and opened the pomegranates. Pali, he split them open, come and eat them in front of her. And as her mouth was salivating the dire need for this food, these pomegranates, he was salivating, causing him a lot of comfort. So he swallowed all this saliva. And what happened? They keep on eating in front of him until his face became bloated and it was like almost translucent, Rashi says. Like a piece of glass. Amar la, Amar la. So he said to her, the Roman said, if I heal you, will you marry me? Amar le, the woman said, in, of course. In Azal Aisi Rimani, so he went and he brought back more pomegranates. Polivachal Kamai, split them open in front of this woman. Amar Allah, Kol Maya did Sarloch. Now the same thing's gonna happen. All the saliva that's accumulating in your mouth, don't swallow it. Toiv Shaddai, spit it out. Adenav Gaminei Ki Uta de Darka. He kept it spitting the remnants of the shear. Ki Uta Yarka Vasitis, until a palm shoot came out of her mouth, as she rid herself of these evil foods. Says the Gemara, quoting the Gemara, V'oisevit. So what did the Mishnah say? That she has to work with wool? So comments the Gemara, this is the din dafka of tzemer, of wool, but not of pishtin, of flax. Mastisa mani review these. The Mishnah's reviewed the Tani ina kavil lamed of the aviv lamed of the Rabbanoi cannot force a woman to stand in front of her father or her son v'lolitin tevin of lifnei be'amto, not to feed the animals. Alvul koiva litin tevin of lifnei be'karoi. But we do force her to give tevin, to give shor lifnei be'kar before his cattle. Rav Yehuda Eimer aveinu koiva lasais be'bishim. We don't force them to do with flax even neisha bishta masriach asapel mesharvidus as fasayim. That what happens to the flax, it causes the mouth to smell, and the lips to swell. And says the Gemara, Hani mili bekisna raima. And this is what Rav Yehuda said regarding the kisna, the flax of the Romans. We continue today's share on the first wide line that the Gemara goes back, quoting the Mishnah, said Rav Eliezer, even if she brings in 100 maidservants, still she can't do nothing. Why? Because it brings to zima, brings to adultery. That is indeed the halacha. These three cases, Rav Malka Bluris, Ever Malka Vigavina, Rav Malkiya. So Rav Malkiya, and then we have Rav Malkiya. So says the Gemara, different schools have a different person. Rav Papa, Rav Masizan Masnita, Rav Malchaya Shmaitzin, Rav Malcha V'simanach Masizan Malchas, Amay Benayu Gbenayu Shvachis. And now we begin, before we begin the new Mishnah, one last piece of the Gemara, Shbag Omer says, Shim Gamliel, Enu Tanikamo. You're right that it's really the same thing as the Tanakama. So that the woman is not allowed to just do nothing. So what is the difference? Says the Gemara, the difference is a woman who plays with puppies. She plays chess. The point being that she's not completely bored, and therefore we don't have that concern. But the other concern that it could bring to a rayas, of course, still exists. We continue with quoting the Mishnah. We learned a few days ago about a neder that a husband makes with regard to that which his wife is doing, and if it's chal or not. So we continue the Mishnah. If someone says to his wife, I'm making a neder, hana, you're no longer allowed to have intimate relations with myself. They have to abstain for 2 weeks. So now says the Gemara, let's go through all laundry lists of different jobs and how long they're allowed to leave their wives. So Talmidim Yotzim to learn Torah Shleiber shows without even consenting from their wife, Shlishim Yom, they're allowed to leave for 30 days. And of course, the detail over here is that there's a shibud. Every woman is mishabed, is obligated to her husband. So how is she allowed to leave? So a young man in yeshiva is allowed to leave for 30 days. Hapayilim workers Shabbos Achas for 1 week. Kaina Amura B'Torah, the amount of time for conjugal relations that's done in the Torah Tayalim. If one is a tayal, if one is a one is a tayal, one is he travels a lot. Then what is the halacha? The Gemara is going to see tomorrow exactly what is a tayal. But before today, what does that do? Apoyalim shtayim, twice a week b'Shabbos. Achamorim achas b'Shabbos. The donkey drivers, the camel and the camel drivers, achas Sabanim, the boat drivers, the sailors, achas chadash and Divrei Rav Eliezer. So different occupations, different jobs allow themselves for different amounts of time, and that is how we calculate the amount of times that husband and wife have to be together minimally. So let's just begin the Gemara that says the Gemara, my time to Beishamai, where does Machlekes Beishamai and Beisil come from? Whether it's 1 week or 2 weeks, Gomer Mi'aledis, so says Beishamai. I know why it's 2 weeks, just like you're Aledis Nekeva. Lachas Aledis Nekeva for 2 weeks. You are not allowed to be together, and after that you are. Of course, that does not apply nowadays because we always have to wait till she stops bleeding. Beisil Gomer Mi'aledis Zachar. Beisil learns out from Mi'aledis Zachar. Beisil Naminim Mi'aledis Nekeva. Asks Gemara, why don't learn all in one central area? So b'maika mifliki. So says the Gemara, what is this machlekes? What is machlekes Beishamai Beisil? Says the Gemara, explains the Gemara. B'maika mifliki marsamidi shchir midi shchir marsamidi do garim la mimidi do garim la. Two fundamental ideas. How do we figure everything out? So says the Gemara, one of Mandam rolls, everything goes, that which is common, just like the woman made a neder not to have, he made a neder that she cannot be with him, a woman becomes a nida, similarly, it's the same thing. Umar Savar was Beishamai old, no. Midu garim la, midu de garim la. That's the way that we look at it. So Amar Rav says, Rav Machlekes bin Mefarish. The entire Machlekes Beishamai Beisil is only when the husband specified 2 weeks according to Beishamai, 1 week according to Beisil, 2 weeks. Avol bistam, but if nothing was said out, divrei hakol yoitzin la'alter v'yitin Kesubos. Says the Gemara, they have to get divorced right away, and he is obligated to play your Kesubos. Shmuel argues afilu bistam nami yantin. Even as time you have to wait. Why? Shamim sabachos l'nedarai. Maybe you would indeed find an opening for his neder. Ask the Gemara, pliva chadasima. We argued one time that Tanan Amadir is Ishta Milani is Lo Yashal Shim Yom. We made a neder that she cannot have any beverage until 30 days. Yamud Parnes, we appoint a supplier. Yosef Mikan Yizvin Ksuba. V'amarav Lo Shal B'Mefarish. Aval Bistam Yotzil Al Tishvi with your wife right away. Eating Ksuba. Shmuel Amar Filu Bistam Nami. Yad Hashem Yimza Bezel and Adar. You never know. Maybe we'll be able to annul his vow. Says the Gemara, as we conclude today's share, Sricha, why do we need all these reasonings? If we would have said only reason one, I would have said the reason why Rav says that you cannot divorce her immediately is why there's no other way to have a supporter. But when it comes little kids, in which it is possible with a barnes, is possible with a mechanical item. Ema Model Shmuel. They agreed to Shmuel. Be Marba'im. Yachkam Shmuel Ababai. Model the Rav. Srichos. You need indeed all the cases. We'll pick it up from the Tudas next year. Mir Tasha.